Good. Me too. If it's okay with you, we can just jump right in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I just want to say, first of all, that I really loved your book. I don't think that that's a thing that you have to say when you're like gonna ask some really hard questions, I think. But I do want to say that it really impacted me in a deep way. So I'm so excited to be here with you.
Good. I'm excited to be here with you too. It'll be nice to be asked some hard and tough questions. I'm not kidding. Like, I prefer that.
Yeah.
I prefer that. The book to me is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of one.
Yes,
So,
I love that.
yeah.
Yes. All right, cool. So I think probably one of the biggest things that jumped out to me when I read it is this kind of return of yourself to your body. And I know for me, that has also been kind of an ongoing, lifelong process. So I'm curious, like, how has your journey to return back to your body been for you?
Hard.
Yeah.
But worthwhile.
Yeah.
Every time I take a step forward and I enter a new phase, which usually just means there's a shift in my brain, in my mindset about my body or my own perception, or how I should feel, how I have to feel about other people's perception of my body. I was raised to really think of other people's perception of my body as my primary concern, and I wasn't very good at being concerned about it. And so my reaction to that was to just be completely not concerned. I wanted to look presentable enough to not be made fun of.
Yeah.
But I saw no way to express myself through the way I treated my body, through the way I saw my body, through the way I adorned my body. For a long time, I didn't think those decisions were available to me.
Yeah.
And I completely let go of any intentionality in that space. And I am just now at like in my early 30s, mid 30s. I am just now figuring out that I'm allowed to treat my body well, adorn it as I please, and generally not care what anybody else thinks about that.
Yes. It's a lifelong project, and
all the time.
And I appreciate the way that you're modeling that for so many of us, and all of us who are kind of in that journey ourselves. From there, I think something else that really struck me is the way that you were able to go back and really capture your authentic childhood self. I've read a lot of memoirs, and I think that's really rare, being able to kind of connect with your thoughts as you were having them. And I think as an adult, mid 30s, it's really hard to kind of like go into that headspace without putting your adult lens on what your child self was thinking. How did you go back and capture your voice as it was at different points, how you saw the world, how you saw the people around you as a child?
This is gonna sound so woo-woo, so forgive me.
Okay, I'm with it.
I kind of had to go back and like talk with myself. And I know that sounds really weird.
No, not for me. Not for me. Maybe for y'all. I don't know.
Maybe for y'all. I don't know. It's like now that like I'm in this space a lot where I'm talking about this and with people who work in this space, like I feel like sometimes I just start saying things and people who don't necessarily think about like a child self are looking at me like, what? Like a child self? You are 34. But it's true that every version of you that you've ever been is still in here.
Yeah.
You never became a different person. You never lived a different life. We try to, I think, move beyond our childhood, move past our childhood.
For sure.
And we can do that. Like we can obviously move forward, but we didn't let anything go. That child self is with us and being dragged along behind us. And they have their own opinions and their own ideas about what they saw and how they see the world. And I think that version of us, that beginning of us, is actually closer to like the core of who we're meant to be than anything else. I think that the world kind of forces us to forget.
Yes.
So that we can fit in to what the world is already doing. It forces us to forget what we knew when we were 5 and 6 and 8 and 10 and 13 even.
Yes.
And I just refused. I think honestly it's because when I was a kid, I was a kid who was in front of screens a lot. Like obviously we didn't have iPads and phones back then, but the TV, I was always in front of the TV and I was always watching TV and I loved movies. A lot of the movies that I grew up on were movies that kind of focused on the idea that the people who grow up to be villains, the people who grow up to be bad people, were always people who lost the connection with their child self. When we go back and watch a lot of those films that were like a person who starts off as a mean person becomes like a kinder person. The difference was usually having a connection with a child that suddenly made them remember their child self. Or in some fantastical way, being forced back into their child body and their child life. So that they could reassess who they became versus who they wanted to be. So I was convinced as a kid that like something would happen that would make you lose yourself, and I did not want to lose myself. I wanted to hold on to what I remembered about being a child, what was hard about being a child, so that I did not perpetuate some of those cruelties, abuses, neglect on any child that I ever came in contact with, or any person that I came in contact with. Now I'm a human. I'm a person, I mess up, but that was really the impetus for it. And I think that's how I got back to it.
Wow. That is not woo-woo to me.
Okay, good.
I hope a lot of people are like, ooh, yeah, I feel that. Maybe. We'll see.
We'll see.
I think in that vein, I remember looking back at the cover of your book, and this is something that I saw on Twitter not too long ago, where people were just now realizing, like, oh my God, look at the snake on the cover of the book. And when I approached that part of the book where you're talking with your grandmother, I believe, right? And it's something about that imagery. It just like it pulled me into the story in a way that like I felt like I was standing there looking at the whole with you, right? And I'm so curious about maybe like the metaphoric kind of representation of that. I mean, there's something real heavy there that it's on the cover of the book. But I think for me, it really spoke to this idea that no one is fully good. No one is fully bad. And I think with your own journey, kind of figuring out how to put down this belief that like, I'm just bad and everything I do is bad. Everything that I feel is bad. Being able to put that down so that you can see the humanity in your family. So I'm curious then, how you walk that line of writing your family in an authentic and true way that like speaks to the ways that they are just kind of fully human and messy and beautiful in the ways that we all are. That is a tough line to walk, and I really felt you holding that with a lot of care.
Yeah, I mean, it's a commitment to my own truth, my own perception, trusting myself, which is a big thing that I think a lot of people don't put enough stock in. A lot of our fear in general comes from not trusting ourselves, not from not trusting other people. Because it'll be like, well, I don't want to find myself in this situation. And it's like, well, you could end up in that situation anyway. Do you trust yourself to be able to get out of it once you're in?
Ooh.
And most people don't.
Yeah.
They don't trust themselves to be able to survive certain situations emotionally, physically, however.
Yeah.
And so they put up all these walls. And it's not because really I don't know what you're going to do. It's really because you could do whatever. We have to accept the reality that you could do whatever. But I don't know what I'm going to do in response to that. I pretty much know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I know that in general, I'm going to tell the truth. Because lying and pretending are really, really hard to maintain. They might smooth things over for a moment, but then you have to live like that.
Yeah.
I've always thought of it like a little bit in terms of like when you're dating a person.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, you show up the first few times as like that best version of yourself and everything, and that's great.
Yeah.
But you really got to think about that avatar that you show up with and how long you can sustain it and how long you want to sustain it.
Right. Right.
Me personally, I don't even have the skill. I can't sustain it. I can't pretend to show up. So I show up in my Reading Rainbow shirt and my bits because I'm like, this is what you're going to get.
I'm here for it.
And with my family, I realized that what was happening as a dynamic in our family was that we had this like face of our family, kind of like an image of our family.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, you know, I always thought people who were concerned about image were like rich people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like we're not protecting a legacy or an estate. Like it's not like oh no, what's gonna happen to the Ford Library? That's not what's happening here.
Right.
It's like it was just an image
Yeah.
that we had and that we were supposed to present. And every other part of our humanity was supposed to be sacrificed to that image.
Yeah.
Our ability to talk about our feelings, our ability to talk about our wrongs, our ability to apologize was all wrapped up in just pushing that image forward. I knew when I was writing this book that what I was doing was deciding that I no longer wanted to live a life where I was in any way caged by my family, community, society, anybody's need to present an image.
Yeah.
I would rather live in reality. And figuring out that I would rather live in reality is the best thing that ever happened to me. So when I was writing this book, I had to think about, okay, I can write this book in a way that, you know, where I write like all my family members as villains, and I'll look at like this young black girl who made it up from her villainous poor family, you know what I mean? Which would have been a lie.
Yeah.
And would have filled a trope, but would have been soul damaging.
Yeah.
I could have wrote it like my family was perfect except for my dad,
Yeah.
which would have been a lie. I wanted to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Why spend all this time working on this thing to tell a lie?
Yeah.
And the truth is that I was raised by humans and I'm a human. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. Not all of it is interesting, but man, did it make a good story.
Yeah.
And I'm just the person who wrote it down.
Oh, yes, yes. Were there parts of the book that were more challenging to write than others?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
First of all, people often go, you know, I thought this book was going to be more about your dad. And there's a lot more about your mom in here than I thought there would be. Which makes sense to me because when I was talking about this book, for most of the time I was talking about my relationship with my dad, and I wasn't talking about my relationship with my mom because those were the parts I was still struggling to write. Those were the parts that I was having the hardest time getting on the page.
Yeah.
And I was having that hard time because I was raised to believe that critiquing my mother's parenting in any way, critiquing my childhood and the way I was raised in any way was a betrayal.
Yeah.
A betrayal. So I had to spend a lot of time figuring out whether or not I agreed with that.
Yeah.
And whether or not I agreed with the fact that it was a betrayal. Because if I agreed with it, then the book as it is could not exist.
Yeah.
And I found ultimately that my experience cannot be somebody else's secret. If I'm going to write about my experience, if I'm going to write about what happened to me, if I'm going to talk about what happened to me, that's mine.
Yeah.
That's my story to tell. My perspective is mine, and I trust myself to tell the truth when I share my perspective. I'm not worried about accidentally lying on somebody.
Right.
Which is what, you know, people make you feel, what if I say something and it's not true?
Yeah.
You know what you saw. You know what you heard. You know what happened to you, and you were there.
Yes.
You are allowed to talk about it. And just because somebody else might want you to keep it a secret because they don't like who they've been, doesn't mean you have to adhere to that.
Ooh, snaps to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It really
yes.
upsets me that people think they have to protect other people's secrets with their silence. Because that silence is fueled by shame, and shame is corrosive to a person's spirit.
It really is.
And when you ask somebody to hold your secrets so that when you ask somebody to hold your secrets in a way that they then can't share their experience and they can't share what has happened in their life, not because it's sacred, but because it's shameful.
Right.
What you're asking that person to carry is a bigger ask than you realize.
Yeah.
But people in general are carrying so much shame that's not theirs that they feel like, well, this person can carry a little of it too. I'm carrying all this. Why can't they carry it too?
Right.
And a lot of people feel that way. I mean, when you live your life in a way where you don't trust yourself, or where you betray yourself, or where you're not on your own side, and you see somebody else living a life where they are on their own side and they do trust themselves, you don't just feel like, oh, I want to do what they're doing. Like, that might be the way we think we would do, but that's not what we really think. What we really think is, I'm doing it the right way and they're getting away with something. How come they don't have to punish themselves the way I'm punishing myself? They must be cheating. And you can't really cheat at life.
No, you can't. Try as you might, you cannot. It catches up with you.
It does.
Sooner than later. That is real. That is real. I think this is a good question to kind of segue into from this point. I wonder a lot about writers and other kind of creative people as well, but specifically writers, and just how much, not necessarily how much of your story is yours to tell, but just how much is sacred to you, and how do you maintain a sense of self in sharing so much of yourself, if that makes sense? Yeah, absolutely, that makes sense.
Like I said earlier, like I'm really clear, or I've worked on becoming really clear on the difference between secrets and privacy. Privacy, to me, is about what's sacred. It's about the things that it's like, no, actually, this is more special because it's just me and you right now. This is like the kind of outing, this is the kind of thing that I'm like, I really want it to be just for the people who are here. And that's the only reason it's private. Like, it's private because it's sacred, or it's private for a safety reason. Those are the only two things that I'm like, that's why we're closing the door a little bit. That's why this thing is a little bit exclusive. Anything that is secret and fueled by shame, I just don't. My reaction to shame now is to be like, oh no, get that off me. My reaction to shame now is like one of those weeds that needs to grow in the dark and damp, like mold. Expose it to the light, and it will die. Because when you expose shame, when you talk about the things that make you ashamed, what you usually find out is that you've been isolated in shame. That's why the shame feels so big and so deep and so real, is because you really do convince yourself that it's just you. And when you expose that shame to the light, you find out very quickly that it's not just you, and that it was never just you, and that it's not gonna be just you. And then you can start dealing with it from a place that's rooted in reality, instead of in the place of what is kind of delusional, thinking that you have more or less power than you actually have. When I go to write about a person or go to write about myself, I am thinking about what's sacred, I'm thinking about what's safe, and I'm thinking about what is shameful. And if I find something in there that's shameful that I'm like, oh, we got to get this off of me, then I'm like, let's talk about it. Let's find a way to integrate it into the work, integrate it into the piece, whatever it is. Let's bring it to the light, because whenever I find something that makes me feel like that, just the evidence of my life so far has been that people are looking to read about that. Even if they don't know it. There's so many times that people read something that I've written or that I've suggested that they read, that they're like, I didn't even know that this could pertain to me. I didn't know that that there was a word for this feeling or this experience. So we got to talk about these things. We've got to be able to do it. Now, when something is sacred and it's just mine, or it's just me and the few people who are there, or me and my spouse, whatever, then y'all will never know about it. Unless we're friends.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Unless we're really good friends, unless we are like, unless it comes to that moment where I feel like, you know, oh, I trust this person and like, this person has earned the right to my vulnerability. I can share this with them. And I feel good about sharing this with them. And I trust myself that if they were to break my confidence, if they were to, you know, betray my confidence, whatever, that I would say, you know, that's not cool. And then I would change my behavior so that I didn't have that exact same situation again. That's all I need. Pain, hurt, all that stuff is going to find you. It's not really about avoiding it. It's about knowing what to do when it shows up. Knowing how to like help yourself when it shows up. Not fix it, not make it go away, but work your way through it. Because it all has something to tell you. Feelings are just information. So, privacy, secrets, writing about my family, writing about myself, like I think about it a lot. It is very intentional. People think what they call memoir or confessional writing or whatever, that it doesn't require the same rigor as any other kind of writing. And it does, probably just in a way that people who have focused on academic rigor have never thought about. Not all of them, but some of them that they've just never considered.
That is so real. And I wonder often about just the practice of critical self-reflection, like just always turning inward. And you strike me as a person who has done that from a very early age. Just very introspective, very kind of in your own head. And I really loved reading the way that your child self would like really wrestle with questions, like the burning, like I need to ask this, right? Like I absolutely need to understand whatever the response is to this question. And that often in your book and just in general, I think very early on kids learn like, oh, questions probably aren't okay. And that's kind of our work as trusted adults, is to be like, yeah, questioning is cool. Please do that. But so many of us get very early on, actually don't ask that, or don't speak at all. Actually, I'd prefer that. How did you overcome, I think, maybe that early lesson of please don't ask hard questions? Because I think this book, a lot of your writing is about asking those hard questions.
I love hard questions.
Yes.
I love asking them and answering them, to be perfectly honest. Like I always have. And I think what I learned early on was that school was the place that I could do this. So public conversation, honestly, has always been a thing for me. Because honestly, I think what happened is that when I got to school and I realized that those people couldn't hit me, every other punishment just seemed like so. Like, okay, like I might get in trouble, like I might get put in in-school suspension. I might get kicked out of school. I might get put in the hallway, whatever, for like asking a question or something like that, which definitely happened at my school. Excuse me. And so what? Like to me as a kid, I think a lot of parents who would be like, you know, if you don't hit your kids, if you don't beat your kids, whoop your kids, then they're gonna end up in jail or they're gonna get in trouble in school. I'm like, first of all, I'd implore you to visit any jail and talk to the inmates about whether or not they got hit. I think you will find that not a big difference between kids who got hit and kids who didn't. But also, I think what also happens in school is the same thing that happened to me for a lot of kids, which is like once you get to school, you're like, wait, but these adults can't hit me. So what is the real punishment? It was like, oh, you're gonna put me in a room and I get to like read the dictionary? They're like, you have to read the dictionary and write out these words. I was like, what?
Wow. Look who you made.
Look what you did. look what you did.
Yes.
You know, like it didn't work. And so school and public and stuff became this place where I think because I was so silenced and I felt so caged in my home that when I was out in public, I was like, I don't believe this is right. And I don't think this is okay.
Yeah.
And I don't think just because you're an adult that you should be able to tell me what to do if you can't explain to me why you want me to do that or why it's important that I do it. Like I was like that as a kid. I was combative. And I feel sorry for a lot of my teachers because of that. Not all of them, but some of them I do feel really sorry for because I was like that. And I know that that is disruptive to a classroom and that's disruptive to a learning environment.
Yeah.
But for me, it was the place where I played out the version of my personality that had any kind of voice whatsoever.
Yes.
And to be perfectly honest, it meant a lot more to me that in school environments, the Boys and Girls Club, public environments, people were a lot more likely to just listen to me.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't get what I wanted.
Yeah.
Even if it didn't turn out the way I wanted to. There was usually some adult around who would just stop and go, listen, I understand why you feel that way.
Yeah.
And I'm not even saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that we need to do something different right now in order to stay on track for everybody else.
Yeah.
So I need your help doing that. I need you to rein it in.
Yeah.
So that I can help, so that I can get everybody else reined in.
Yes.
And the minute I was like, oh, we're working together, then it was like,
Yeah.
from class clown to teacher's pet.
Yes. Yes.
That quickly. As soon as you let me know we're working together, fine.
Yes.
But I had a really, really tough time with people who had any kind of authority or felt that they should have authority over me because of their age or their job or something. Because I had just been raised by a bunch of people who were obviously older than me who didn't seem to know what they were doing. So I'm like the age, so you know, for me, I was like the age thing, that's not really doing it for me. The you're a teacher and I'm a child thing, but you just told me Greece was in Asia. That's not working for me. This isn't gonna work out. Like your authority in this moment, I'm questioning it and I feel okay about that.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, so that's how that went in those situations. And that's, I think, a lot of why I am the way I am now. That's why 9-to-5 jobs have not traditionally worked out for me.
Yes.
Because I it's not that I don't like being told what to do or can't be told what to do. It is much more so that there is a tone and a tenor, and there is a respect issue. And because I've been broke, I'm not scared of it.
Yes.
So it's like, I'll go live in a studio for very cheap. In a place that I know the people. You might not know people there, but I do.
Right.
And I'll be very happy living in that studio with my 80-pound dog and my husband by my, doing our thing on our own.
Yeah.
Before I come here and let you treat me like I'm less than you because you got to this job before I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. That just kind of turns everything on its head, right? Oh man. I feel that viscerally. I would much rather.
I think most people do.
Yeah,
I think most people do feel that way.
Yeah.
It's like you want, because you do kind of you want to respect authority. Like you want to feel like, yeah, y'all are taking care of that part and I'm going to take care of this part. But when the authority starts to identify as authority.
Yes.
And you start to see that and you're like, I don't know. Like you getting a little,
Yeah.
It's good to call that out.
Yes.
And it's good to talk to those people like they are being as ridiculous as they are, which is what I always did. I've always had bosses who I was like, this isn't, okay.
And it's so
Does this sound right to you?
Right, exactly. It's so unexpected. I think most people don't question or challenge. Yeah. So
and then when
you
do, and then you know what's messed up. I hate to say it, but I'm gonna peep game real quick. When you do, unfortunately, then they're like, you know what? You've got leadership potential.
Right.
Do you want to be promoted? And it's like, no. No, I want you to behave well.
Yes.
I don't want to have to be promoted into a different place for you to feel like I'm worth your time, your attention, your consideration, or your compassion.
Right.
No, I don't want to be promoted. I'm not telling you this because I'm trying to impress you. I'm telling you this because I'm trying to help you before everybody in here quits.
Right. Oh, that's real. That is
I'm a harbinger. I'm a harbinger.
It's like if I'm saying it.
If I'm telling you,
Yes.
it's because I'm keeping it 100% real.
Yes.
I have no reason to lie to you. I don't like you enough. I don't like this job enough to lie to you about it.
Yeah.
I never have, never will.
Yeah.
Like, I'm telling you the truth because you want to do better. So go do better.
Yeah. Yeah. And then release people to.
And then I release people. I'm so good at releasing people. Like, I might tell you some stuff and I like keep it real with you for a hot 30 seconds. And if I can tell you can't handle it, I'm like, cool. And I save my energy because I don't have enough.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I'm already introverted as hell. So sorry for the curse word.
No, everything's fine. We're good. We're good. We're good. I have a question. Speaking of an 80-pound dog.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's talk about dogs.
Yes. Let's talk about dogs. I am curious what Astro has brought to your creative practice. Adopting a dog.
Oh my God.
What has that done for you?
Well, first of all, especially when I was in Brooklyn, because now it's so much easier to just like let him out, go for like a little walk and stuff. But in Brooklyn, if he's going out, we got to go for a walk.
Yes.
And so those walks were timed for certain times of the day. So I could do things like, okay, I'm gonna take him on his first walk and I'm gonna work on this thing until it's time for his second walk.
Gotcha.
And that would help out. Astro is also such a chill dog. He's a chocolate lab, 80 pounds, best dog in the world. He's so chill that, like, you know how sometimes it's really nice to work with somebody, like have a buddy, where it's like you're not talking to each other, like that's not the point. It's like you both have your own projects and you're in your own world, but you're next to each other.
That sounds like
and
heaven.
how good that feels.
Oof, yes.
That's sometimes me with my dog. Sometimes me with my husband, mostly me with my dog.
Gotcha.
Come sit with me right here on the couch. I'm gonna work here. You sit here and hang out. And I just sit and I type and I'll look over and he'll look back at me like, yeah, you're doing a good job. I'm like, great. And keep going. He's the best. Like, he feels me. Like, when I'm having hard times, anxiety, panic, and like I lay down and he'll come and he'll like lay down next to me with like his head on my chest and he'll just put his head on my chest. You know, like not to like weigh me down, but just like that pressure that's like, I'm here, I got you. And it's so weird. I didn't think it would be like that. I wanted a dog. I really, really wanted a dog.
Yeah.
I did not think that I would love my dog this much. I knew I'd like him. I knew I'd take good care of him.
Yeah.
But I didn't know I'd buy a Subaru with seats that heat in the back and like a seat hammock that he gets in, because I was very concerned about his comfort.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know that I would never again be able to go to Starbucks and not get a pup cup. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know how my life would change, but it has changed
Yes.
for the better.
Oh my goodness.
I love him so much, I miss him already.
Oh.
Now we both have separation anxiety, especially post-pandemic. We're not even
We're not even
post-pandemic.
post, no.
But like just in this space where we're getting to be around each other again and stuff like that. Like, everybody's like, let's go travel. And I'm like, yeah, let's travel. And then I'm like,
But no.
I can't bring my dog. But I can't bring my dog.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he loves to ride in the car.
Oh.
It's the best. If he hears the car keys, he's like,
ready.
let's go.
Yeah,
He's
I'm ready.
He's
I'm
at
down,
the door.
Down to clown. I love that. I love that so much.
I'm like, I'm trying not to get emotional. I love my dog so
It's totally
I can't help it.
I love that. Thank you for humoring me. I love all Astro content personally. Yes. I have one last question,
Let's go.
and then we're probably gonna transition into Q&A. But I've read a few times that it took about a decade to write Somebody's Daughter.
Yeah.
What was your creative process like? And when did you know, like, okay, this is done. I'm ready to bring this book home now?
Yeah. People ask me about my creative process a lot, and I feel bad that I don't, like, I think I say different parts to everybody, but like really over 10 years.
Yeah. It's been
The creative process was don't give up. Like, that was the whole creative process. What if you just didn't give up?
Yes.
What if you just keep going?
Yes.
And so I kept going, and I kept trying to like move through this book and move through this project. And to be honest, like even when I sold it, I was kind of like, they're not going to publish this book. Like I sold it.
Yeah.
It was like at auction.
Yeah.
There were 14 different publishing houses bidding on my book. And I still at that time was like, I mean, we'll see. That's the way my brain works. And now I'm at a point where I'm able to give myself a little more room to know and believe that, like, hey, things might work out, actually. Just because like you have this thing in your head where you think, if I think everything will go wrong and then it goes right, then it's a surprise. But the problem is that when things go right, you don't know what to do with that. Like, you actually don't know how to be excited.
Right.
You've practiced the opposite for so long that now the good things are happening, and it's like, ugh, like that's what it feels like. Instead of like, yay, it's like, ugh, like what is that feeling?
Right.
And so from that point, when I sold the book at the end of 2017, to having the book officially be handed in and done in like September of 2020, it was a lot of shutting down my life to write for days at a time.
Yeah.
A lot of therapy.
Oof.
Oh my gosh, the therapy.
Yeah.
The therapy became such a thing that I had to like go away for like a thing, like what I call trauma camp. I think I mentioned like a trauma camp before, where you basically go and they help you figure out what's going on, and then they help you figure out how to begin to move out of that and move forward. And it wasn't until I went there, which was in August of 2020, that I was able to finish my book.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I couldn't do it until after that. I had a lot of pieces, had a lot of material, but I'm talking about like 10 years of working on this project to actually be in like the finishing process over the course of a month.
Right.
Over a course, just because now I can do it.
That is
and
wild.
I wasn't able to do it before. So that's my process. Yeah. Don't give up and go to therapy.
Go to therapy. Don't give up. I'm going to therapy today. I'm so excited.
Good job. I'm proud of you.
Yes. All right. So we have a few questions from our audience.
Great.
Thanks, y'all, for sending those in. I'm sorry we won't be able to get to all of them, but we are going to try our best to get to at least 2 or 3. So I wanted to start with a question about your mom. How do you navigate conversations with her and perhaps other family members that still believe that sharing the stories that you're sharing are a form of betrayal?
Being totally honest about my situation, because it's personal, it's my situation.
Yeah.
First of all, my family right now doesn't care. They're like, hey, we're related to a New York Times bestseller. And that is their only focus. They're just really excited about that part.
Yeah.
Nobody who ended up reading the book ended up being angry with me.
Yeah.
Or upset with me about it. As a matter of fact, my aunts and uncles, for the most part, took the time to like reach out and say, I feel like you did a really good job of being fair. And I think you're right. Yeah. That there are a lot of things we did wrong, and there's a lot of stuff we should talk about that we haven't been talking about. Turns out my family was reasonable. I just had to write a book. My mother, on the other hand, has not read it, will probably never read it. Yeah. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I want to be clear about, the fact that my relationship with my mother has been fine and or functional, but we have never really been close. So my stakes and the risk that I took in writing a book like this are not going to be the same as somebody who feels like they have a really tight-knit relationship with their parents or something like that. I don't have that. I love my mom. You know, I care about my mom.
Yeah.
But if my mom didn't call me for a month or 2 months, that wouldn't be uncommon or abnormal in my life.
Yeah.
Like, so it's one of those things where it's like somebody was like, you know, oh, you haven't heard from your mom. Is she giving you the silent treatment? And I'm like, unless my whole life is the silent treatment, then no.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is just how she is. My mom, there are things that she chooses to just not deal with, not confront. My reluctance to embrace reality is something that that's a environment that I was born into.
Yeah.
And my choice to embrace reality and to push past that hesitancy puts me in a place that my mother is not at this time. And I know that seems like it should be really devastating. And I think it would be really devastating if we had the foundation of closeness.
Yeah.
But because we don't,
Yeah.
it's kind of just another day in the neighborhood.
Has your dad read the book?
Not this last weekend, but the weekend before that, went and my husband and I drove up and had breakfast with my dad.
Oh.
And I was finally able, our vaccines were all marinated now, so we're
Wonderful.
good. So I was able to go take him a copy of my book.
Oh.
And he is reading it now. So I'll know soon what he thinks or his thoughts or how he feels. But I'm not really worried about it. You know, in the time I've spent with my dad since his release, one of the things that has been really lovely is to have a relationship with a parent who doesn't want me to be anything else. He just doesn't need me or want me to be anything other than I am.
Yeah.
He just wants the chance to get to know me.
That's beautiful.
So, yeah.
I like underlined that part of the book where you went to go and visit him and he was saying, just tell the truth. And that like, I can't even imagine even my dad saying that to me right now. Like, yeah, that's so real.
Most parents don't want you to tell the truth. They don't want
my
you.
dad also, but it's true.
And it's the thing, you love them, you're like, but they're like, no, don't tell people what I did. Like, that's
so real.
That's what it is.
The image is everything. Oh my goodness, yes. I wanted to ask another question. Oh, I like this. Okay, what kind of routine or rituals do you have in place for self-care and centering? I
find that the number one thing I can do with self-care, and I know I've talked about it a lot, but is be honest. I tell people what I need when I know what I need.
Yeah.
I tell people what I want when I know what I want. I tell people when I need time to figure either of those things out. And I give myself room and patience to not move until I figure those things out. I do a lot of, I always call it like feeding myself when I'm upset or when I'm in a bad place, and that doesn't necessarily mean like food.
Yeah.
Like feeding myself is like knowing what feeds me, what movies, what books, what activities, what pours into me, what gives to me in a way that feels abundant, so that I can then start to get to a place where I can start to give again, and where I can start to be the way I want to be and show up the way I want to show up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that could be anything from being like waking up in the morning and being like, you know what? Every meal I have today, I'm going to touch. And I'm going to make with my hands. And the hour before I eat, I'm gonna think about, what do I want? What feels good to my body right now? And when I start to prepare my meal, I'm gonna be thinking of it that way.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be thinking of it like, this is gonna feel so good. This is gonna taste so good. This is gonna be so good. And like, I'll be listening to an audiobook or a podcast or something, and I'll just let myself be with myself, caring for myself and holding myself.
Yeah.
And that helps, like that is a thing that helps a lot. Another routine that I have for self-care is that I say no a lot. Like a lot. I say no. I love it. I say no all the time. I only give enthusiastic yeses.
Yeah.
Because I know how I want to show up, and I know who I want to be when I get there, or when I collaborate or work with people or whatever. And if I know I'm not going to be able to be that person, because I'm not going to be excited, I'm not going to be motivated, I'm not going to feel like we're doing something that's meaningful or worthwhile or whatever it is, then it's just going to be a pass for both of us.
Yes.
It's a pass for both of us.
Absolutely.
Like, you may think you want to work with me in those circumstances, but part of trusting myself, part of that work is knowing that, like, I know who I'm going to be in that situation. I know how I'm going to act in that situation. We've been there. So let me save you some trouble as well. Trust me about me. Always trust me about me. I know what I'm going to do.
Oh, that is a word. That is a word I think we can leave on. Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
What has been just like one favorite thing that you've gotten into since you've moved back home to Indiana?
Ooh. What have I gotten into since I've moved back? Okay, so right now, my neighbors have a pretty amazing garden. And every once in a while, they drop off just something from their garden. Something they have a bunch of. They'll text me, hey, we got a bunch of this, we're gonna drop it off, whatever. I love having something show up and just deciding, okay, well, I'm gonna use it now to make this. Yesterday, my neighbor dropped off, she had a bunch of these juicy ripe peaches that she dropped off. And my husband was about to play D&D, and I was like, I'm gonna make a cobbler. I want to make a cobbler, but I want to make a cobbler that's made in a cast iron skillet that goes from the stove top to the oven. And I couldn't find like a recipe that did that, so I had to like put a bunch of recipes together and like figure something out, and it came out so good. And that's something that I was never able to do in Brooklyn. Nobody ever dropped anything off that I could make something with.
Yeah.
Nobody ever dropped anything off except a bill. Anyway, so coming back and having things like that happen is just, and farmers markets, that are like real farmers markets that are not like, on a sidewalk next to the bodega. It's really lovely.
Yes.
I choose this life. This is nice.
Amen. We're glad to have you home. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.